Hey,
It's just part of our belief system that failure is not a good thing. Losers fail, winners do not. But if you look at like baseball, for example, there's a lot of losing going on for even the best players that are out there. And if we can just take that idea and grab hold of it, it would be much more advantageous for organizations to allow their employees to try new things and see what works and what doesn't, rather than it's got to be this way.
thinking about that, these rules and how you play the game, how does that transfer in, or how does your process work to gamify learning experiences?
Start with who is playing, right? Who are we designing this for and why? And when we ask our why question, we're not asking it from the traditional L&D of what do we want the learner to learn? We ask the why of why would the business care? How is this going to make the business better? Am I going to decrease time to get my products to my customer? Am I going to increase my customer satisfaction rate, right? So we've got to take it back to a measurable for the business.
Hey, welcome to GameLayer, where we explore the science of play and the quest of learning. I am your host, David Kolmer. Theme music by Caleb Willits. Welcome down to GameLayer.
I play piano.
I play chess.
I play everything.
I play games of my own invention.
I'd like to move to the domain of play.
Welcome to another episode of GameLayer. I'm your host, David Kolmer. My guest today needs no introduction in the gamified learning space. MonicaCornetti has been dubbed the Queen of Activities before she started Sententia Gamification Certification Program. I am going through that program now. I'm on level 2. So in a way, she is an instructor of mine. She is walking me through the process of how Sententia gamifies or game-enhanced learning spaces. And the process has to do with the motivation episode, which was episode 2 of season 1 of GameLayer, where Jonathan Peters outlined how we use the Reese motivation profile to identify what motivates our learners or our players, and then how we can leverage that information to then move forward and add game mechanics, or we could say layer on game mechanics, to make learning outcomes better, to make the learning process more enjoyable. And overall, why not make it more enjoyable? Because when you enjoy something, science has proven that increases the synapses connected to that memory in your brain, so you're just going to remember it. It's brain science. So without further ado, let's bring in the fun, the queen of activity, the guru of Sententia gamification, MonicaCornetti.
Thank you for inviting me. I've been wanting to connect with you on this podcast for a long time, so I'm happy that we're making it happen.
As am I. Thank you so much for your time and really excited to have you on the program. I wanted to start off I think everyone sort of knows you in the gamified learning space. So I wanted to just ask more of a personal question around where are you from originally? Or where do you come from?
I grew up in Pennsylvania. Consider myself a Pennsylvania girl, although we moved to Texas when I was probably late 90s. So my kids actually grew up in Texas. So they would consider themselves Texan more than from Pennsylvania. Moved around a lot growing up too. So kind of, have you ever heard of a place, Oliver? All over. Oliver. Yes.
So Oliver, U.S.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. So was it military? Were you in a military family or just moved a lot?
My dad was in insurance, and at that time, kind of like with banks, they kept getting bought up. And so as one was acquired, then we'd move to another location. So it really had to do with my dad's work, although it wasn't military.
Well, thanks for sharing that. Just wanted to start on more of a personal note. So I understand now that you are living in Texas, where they have the best beaches in Texas. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is accurate. We actually are in a little place called South Padre Island. So it is classified as a tropical island, and it's,
oh, wow.
I forget the length of the island totally, 32 miles maybe, but you can't really drive that far up on it. It becomes state land where there is actually no road. But we are also, coincidentally, just as the crow flies, about 10 miles from Boca Chica Beach, which is now SpaceX. It's now become its own space town city. And I read yesterday that Elon wants to build the largest building in the world to build his thousands of rockets that he plans to launch to Mars. So we're pretty close to that.
Wow, it really put you on the map.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's intense. How do you feel about that?
I'm sure there's a lot of pros and cons to that. So
Sure.
what we shall see as it develops.
Right.
Yeah.
So I've recently learned that we really shouldn't use, according to Bartle himself, to use the Bartle plane taxonomy alone for designing gamified learning events. But I'm still curious, looking at that quadrant, which of the archetypes do you fall into? Are you an achiever, explorer, socializer, or killer?
Yeah, because Bartle was really, I don't want to say adamant, but got to hear him speak on not using it. But I would definitely be an achiever. I like to, what's the goal? What's our objective? How are we going to get there? Check, 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 check. So yes, I would definitely be in that achiever category.
So that really makes sense with you running a business the way you're doing, right?
Well,
you're achieving success.
Yeah. If we look at the Reese motivational profile, it's also attached for me to power. So it's not so much controlling you or so much controlling the environment, but creating new things, always thinking of something, coming up with new things all the time. That's where my high power really shows itself.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. I still think it's a fun quadrant, right? I understand that he was just looking at MUDs and that maybe it's not for all gamified learning environments, but to me, it's a fun little game. Like, where do you fall on that quadrant?
Yeah. I think that's also where gamification runs amok, because if we only focus on that achieving, and the reason that a lot of gamification does is because it's easy to measure. What's the goal? Did we hit it? How far off? Yes or no? Yes or no? So it's an easy algorithm, easy to reward. Exploration's a lot harder to, how do we measure someone's exploration? So, yeah, that's where I think a lot of designing was based on achievement, and it's not necessarily the best or the only. Let's say it that way. It tends to be the only thing we're measuring.
I could see how exploring and activities would be less quantifiable, right? Because it's like, well, what really was the outcome there?
Or even the socialization. We'd love to think that learning happens just, as we sit here in front of our computer by ourselves, but that's really not how we're hardwired. And that socialization is also something that's a lot more difficult to measure. How do we encourage it? How do we give feedback on that? When I say reward, I don't mean stuff, but unlocks, boosters. How do we keep moving people forward with that? So, yeah. And then those killers, well, that's a lot more difficult. Yeah.
We'll leave them for another discussion for another day. So I heard from a valid resource that you were once called the Queen of Activities. And I want to hear about that. Where did that come from? And how does that resonate with you today? Well,
I still am always thinking, how can we make this more memorable? It happened to me. I was in a session and the gentleman was talking about leadership, and he had us stand up, point in the direction of what we thought was true north. And then he had us all look around and see that we were all pointing different directions. I remember that. And that happened probably, I would say, mid 2010, 2012, somewhere in there. But of everything about his leadership talk, I remember true north. I don't remember his 7 points about effective leadership. So when that happened and I realized how impactful that was, it tied directly to the idea of if we talk about chunking in learning, that we get the overview of what this is about and we understand that, then we teach some conceptual points, but then we've got to do some skill practice. And that's where activities come in, because I get a safe place to try something where I have that aha moment where I would not have had if I just sit there and listen to you talking about it. So at the time that I got that title, there was a group of us who were all contracting with different companies to deliver their training. And what that meant was every day was a different audience. Something worked beautifully on Tuesday, and on Wednesday you were falling flat on your face because totally different group, different city. So I started carrying a little notebook of activities with me, and my term was to change the temperature in the room. So if something wasn't working, I needed to change the temperature, and activity was the best way to do that. So I just started carrying a little notebook of different ideas. I got a lot of them from elementary school activity books, because you find that working with sixth graders is about the same as working with a room of adults. And from that point, then I wrote my first book, which was an activity book. And people still call me looking for activities for how could I demonstrate change or creative thinking or strategic planning. So those are fun.
That is fun. And I do agree with the idea that really pedagogical activities and andragogical activities are really similar, right? There's a lot of crossover there. And we like to maybe even discuss that a little bit too much, because I've taught adults and I've taught children, and the same activities work in both classrooms. So that is interesting.
It's all set up in debrief, right? The first time that I really started taking a deep dive into adult learning, because I always thought I was going to be an educator, but of children. My fourth grade teacher told me, you're going to be a teacher and you're going to do great things. So from fourth grade on, I never questioned that, but I really thought I was going to be like her, an elementary school teacher. But then, you know, life went on, and I did not until I was 40 and I started teaching adults. But I went to our local bookstore, and the only book that they had was by a gentleman named Mel Silberman. And he's no longer with us. He's probably the great-grandfather of brain-based learning, long before we talked about brain-based learning. But I learned from him, and I'm so thankful. When I was disappointed it was the only book on the shelf, but when I look back, I realized how fortunate I was that I learned the right way from the beginning. I never questioned anything that he said, but his whole point about activities was make the learning the student's responsibility, and you can use basically any activity as long as you set it up and debrief it appropriately. It'll work for any concept that you're teaching. And I bought into it fully, and I still believe it and include it. When I have live training next week. I'll be in Houston, then I'll be in Dallas, and I will incorporate a lot of that interactivity where the student is doing the work, not me. But they won't know it's work because it'll be playful, but they'll have those aha moments that they'll remember.
Yeah, you're making me think of phrases like differentiation, right? Setting that up. And so you're differentiating the same activity for different levels of learners.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah. I love it.
And the nice thing about that is that you see that dynamic of people forming their own, I'll say teams, but their own little community, right? And they become very protective of the people in their community, and they work together and they help each other. It's just such a fun dynamic to see play out time after time after time. Even if people say, well, I'm an introvert and I'm not comfortable with that, you'll still see them start engaging with their team, and people giving that give and take inside that team dynamic of allowing people to be who they are and still be their best selves within that dynamic. Yeah, that's very good.
I'm sort of an extrovert to a fault, right? I'm very out there, a very outspoken person. So I've started to listen to books about introverts. And something that surprised me is introverts need people too.
Yeah.
And that was kind of an aha moment for me, where it's like, it's not that introverts don't like people, because I am partially introverted. I have an introverted side, and that kind of resonated with me, right? I spend a lot of time at a conference or something, and it's just like overstimulation. I need to go back to my room and decompress. Yeah. I think we all have an element of that, right? So we're all on a spectrum somehow.
Yeah, and if you really study it, and this is deeper than we want to go, but most of us are.
Maybe not.
There's very few of us who are actually introverts or extroverts. If you look at the bell curve, most of us are average. But for some of us, like when I'm done with a day of teaching, I really am best just putting my, pods in my ear and just unwinding, listening to some music or watching a video or two, rather than having more conversation. Whereas someone like you, or my partner, Jonathan, they would rather have more conversation than to shut down. So we all, as far as like renewing ourselves, refreshing, we all have different strategies. But I think most of us, just as it shows with the bell curve, most of us are average. So yeah, by definition.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
interesting. You said earlier with the True North activity that the speaker had 7 points. And I just want to ask, was that Stephen Covey by chance? Or anyone
No,
I would have
but
known? Or do you even remember who it was?
I do remember the gentleman who taught it. His name's Robert Mallon. But
Okay.
I always thought it was Robert's. And in fact, in my activity book, I give credit to Robert for that particular activity. And it was years later I found it was a Covey activity. And I was like, wow, I thought I had no idea. I was like, Stephen Covey stole that idea from Robert, but that's not. Information's out there. We all have different ways of learning. There was something I was just reading the other day and I was like, that's not an original idea. I was listening to the book called Switch by Chip and Dan Heath, who are two of my favorite authors.
Very good book.
The Elephant and the Rider. And I was like,
of
I've been hearing
course.
about the Elephant and the Rider forever. And it wasn't
too.
from Chip and Dan Heath, but who had the original idea? I think the ideas get sprinkled out there in the universe, and some of us pick them up and run with them, and others, we don't even notice that they're there. But I don't think
Would you mind explaining the elephant and the rider to the listeners in case they don't know that
so
analogy?
the idea with the elephant and the rider is like our riders are our logic, reasoning self, and the elephant is more emotional. I want to get there now, or I don't want to take the energy for it. So the logical rider always has to be influencing the elephant to make change, because change is very difficult. And the whole concept behind Switch is that there are ways to make change easier. There's different strategies that we can incorporate, like making the change smaller so somebody believes that they can do it. And if you look at like the work of BJ Fogg from Stanford and his tiny habits, that's what he's doing. Like, I'm only going to do this for a minute because my brain will do a minute. If you say I got to do this for an hour or forever, I'm going to be like, no, I can't. I don't want to. But I can start making a new habit by making that change smaller. So that's the whole idea behind that book. And it's a fantastic book. Switch is that we're asking our learners to change all the time. And it's not that they're doing something wrong. It's that maybe we just need to do something new, or things work till they don't work anymore. But we don't like change, even when it's good for us. So how can we make that change easier to start that new habit? And it's just a really powerful concept.
It really is. And you made me think of Daniel Pink, his books about sales and how everyone is in sales. And I read that while I was a training facilitator, and it really resonated with me changing and becoming a better trainer or facilitator. But I need to sell this. This needs to be compelling, right?
Right.
Because people don't want to change. You have to convince them that there's something in it for them, right?
Something in it for them, right? When they're exploring
With them.
change, I always think that, I teach the change circle, that the first is always denial and then resistance. Like, no, we're not going to, and then why? And so when we are the change agent, expect to be met with denial and resistance. And then the next phase is that exploration. Well, what's in it for me? How is this going to make me thinner, faster, richer, taller? Whatever, right? How's it going to make me better? And if we can plug into that and help them to explore that without telling them, the easiest way to get people to change is not to tell them, but to let them discover it on their own. And it's so difficult because we'd like to save you time and save me time. Let me just tell you and just do it. But it just doesn't work that way. And you'd think that we would have learned that by now, but we haven't. We keep trying to tell people. Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to remember. And you make me think of the sage on the stage, the guide on the side.
Right.
And I researched that quite a bit. I was trying to speak about that once, and it was so hard to find who said that first, because I read it in a book and she quoted someone else. And
I heard it from a woman that helped to certify me way back when I started training. Her name is Pat Volz. I would say that that's a Pat Volz original, but I'm wrong. It's just that that's where I first heard it, and that's just stayed when you remember those and things like those memory hooks, like that rhyming part of that, right? Yeah. Like you can remember that. And I've always thought it, but the problem with that is that a lot of us like being on the stage.
Right.
Yeah. We want the attention, or we want to lead. And so guiding from the side sounds kind of, and it's how learning happens though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Sharon Bauman wrote a book called Training from the Back of the Room. And it was
Yes.
basically, just an encyclopedia of activities. And, I loved
She's
that
really
book.
good at that.
And she brought
Yeah.
that up. And I always thought it was her. And it wasn't. Someone else was writing it in their dissertation. It's probably the person you know. It happens
I
a
don't
lot,
think
right?
so. Yeah.
We misquote people all the time. Like if you use any sort of memes on the internet, you're probably misquoting people.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there's things that I thought my dad was the original on, and then I'll be like, they stole my dad's idea. And it's like, no, again, it was years before, but
Right.
they never came in contact with each other. But again, ideas are sprinkled out there. Some people grab them and run with them, and others don't even see them. So it's just that when we think about being curious and staying open, we never know where that next idea is going to come from or how we're going to learn from it. And the more we can just stay open to that, then we'll learn new things. Unfortunately, for those of us who are in this profession, we also think that our learners are like that our learners are sitting there being curious. And most of our learners are not like that. When we're wondering like, well, why don't they get this? Well, because we haven't made it compelling for them to get it. Why would they? They're wondering, why do you want me to change? Why can't I just keep doing it the way I've been doing it? We get hung up in that cycle all the time as learning and development professionals.
Right. And you're making me think of a topic you taught me about called self-hugging. So can you talk about self-hugging a bit?
Yeah, we use the Stephen Reese's motivational profiling when we do design and we teach. In fact, I'm doing a webinar tomorrow for Training Magazine Network. And the question always should be who rather than what. As learning and development professionals, human resource professionals, we always want to teach you something, right? We want you to get this content. But rather than starting with the what, we really should be starting with the who. Who needs to know this information and why do they need to know it? And depending on who they are in the organization or what their role is, they need to know it for a different reason. So we can't just deliver the same information the same way to everyone. But with the concept of self-hugging, we don't even address who. We just think, well, I like this, so you should like this. And we call that self-hugging. And the challenge with self-hugging is that in every design we do, we will self-hug. It's a guarantee. And it's not until we put it in other people's hands so they get a chance to play test it, give us feedback, that we realize, wow, that was a lot of self-hugging right there. Because only reason that's in there is because I like it and I wanted it, not necessarily who the learner is or what they're needing from us. And it happens every single time, which is why one of our philosophies is to test early and test often, because you'll start to see those little design challenges right away as soon as you put it in someone else's hands. Yeah. We do a lot of self-hugging. Always. All of us do. We like it.
I do it all the time.
You'll like it, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Because it just makes sense that you would design something that you would like. It's just, it makes sense. It's logical.
And why wouldn't you like it? What's wrong with you?
Yeah. What's wrong with you? Yeah. Why don't you want to run through this field and look for items?
I know. Yes. You should want to do this. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And it also kind of goes back again to what you had already said about how the learners don't always share the exact same growth mindset that we have as educators. And it's a really good point to bring up because I think a lot of times educators do get a little bit overexcited and it's just a little bit extra. And the learner's probably just a little bit overwhelmed.
And even if we think about technology and we get excited about a technology and wow, look what this can do. And then our learners are in this environment where now they don't understand and it seems like everyone else does. And so they have that fear of really looking foolish in front of their peers. And then a fear brain sets in, so no learning can happen, and they just won't even participate. They just shut down. And meantime, we're thinking, this is the coolest thing since sliced bread. Why are you not excited about this? And it's just that cycle of us not, especially with technology, we can only go as fast as our slowest learner. And so we've got to give them an opportunity to try it out. And not talking about learning styles, but all of us do learn differently. And some of us would like to hear it and then go try it on our own. Others are going to be right there diving in with it with you. And even if they're making a mistake, they're acknowledging that publicly. Whereas others would be horrified if you realize they didn't really understand what was going on. So really have to be aware of that when we're introducing new ideas, different ideas, technology, that feeling that we have when it's introduced to us, magnify that with our learners. I don't know how many times, but it's a lot stronger in our learners because most of our learners don't have that innate desire for that curiosity to learn. They just really would like to keep doing what they've been doing.
And I love how you pointed out that.
Maybe they had it when they were children, which I think they did.
Maybe they did.
I think they did. But it gets worked out of them with a lot of life. I'm not blaming anybody, but a lot of things happen in life.
Right.
And by the time our adult learners get to us, their belief about their ability to learn or their ability to change, they've lost what would have been innate a long time ago. And now you're standing in front of you. And now it's our responsibility to help them to learn so they can be successful. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really have seen that work, right? Where we have that game-enhanced learning environment. It does push them back into that childlike sense of play. I've seen that happen.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of exciting. It's like Peter Pan. It's just kind of like, oh, that's still in me somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I'm into this. It's that moment of, oh, that spark.
And you see that.
It's exciting.
Like when people play games, right? Like they'll get frustrated, they'll throw the controller down, right? But they'll go back to it and they'll try again and try again and try again because it's a safe place. I didn't get it. All right, I'm going to try something different. In learning, we never really gave students that chance, right? You get one chance to do well. If you don't do well, you can maybe take it again, but we're already going to penalize you. Like you'll automatically lose 10 points if you try again. So much so that we have students retake entire years of classes rather than helping them to understand a topic. We got it all wrong in education. And there's lots of reasons for that, which is a whole nother topic. But yeah.
So the reason I have you on the show is because I see you as a person who's adjusting things and nudging things to make them a little bit more in the right. And so I'd like to transition maybe from you being the activity goddess. What was the transition from that to being the owner of a brand of gamifying learning content? What was that transition like, or how did that happen?
I really think, if I was to give credit where it really should go is I had, at the same time that I was designing and delivering training that was activity based, at that same time I have three sons who were in their teen years, and we had remodeled the house so they had their own rec room. It was their place for their musical instruments, their games, their pool table, all of that. And it was detached from the house so they could do their thing over there. But when I would observe them, I would see them playing games with their friends for hours. Like I couldn't get them to study for a simple, like let's say Spanish test for 20, 30 minutes, but hours they'd be playing games and encouraging each other and giving each other on how to get past a certain area or trying it again or testing their skills, being the first one there, but then going back and showing others. I kept asking, where's the manual? Where's the manual? And they'd laugh at me and say, there is no manual, Mom. And as I observed them, I thought, this really works. And why don't I start bringing some of these ideas into training that I'm designing? So I started doing that in about 2009, 2008, 2009. And I didn't know that gamification was actually a genre until 2012. So I had already designed gamified learning trial and error before I knew the term gamification. And once I knew it and realized that's what I had been doing or trying to do or dabbling in, that I realized this is really where I want to build my brand. I want it to be based on the fun of games, the safeness. Let me go back to that. We talk a lot about psychological safety, but the safety that games provide to fail and try again.
Yes.
And keep practicing those skills. Any game, right? Whether we're talking golf, basketball, Mario, Donkey Kong, right? It's just any game. We get that safety to try again.
And that failure is so important in the process of learning, right? That
Yeah.
ability to go back and adjust.
We have GameCon coming up this October, which you'll be a part of, which I'm delighted.
I will. I'm
And
excited.
our keynote speaker, his name is Ashlyn Parker, and he is the founder of a group called the Trumpet Mafia. And so they'll be playing and he'll be keynoting our opening night. But he talks about bringing trumpet players of all ages into this trumpet mafia. And one of his great quotes is, you gotta let them have their fails, right? Like he could try and make it easier for them that they don't have to. But as soon as he does that, they don't learn. Like you can't take failure away from people. It's how they will actually grow and develop. And in learning and development, we don't really like to talk about failure. Like we don't want people to fail. We want them to succeed. But when we realize that failure can actually help them to learn something, an idea better and actually make it stick, we can get a little bit more comfortable with it. But again, it's been ingrained in us for so long that failure and achievement, failure and success don't go hand in hand, which is actually not true. But we've been conditioned to believe that.
You're making me think of recording KPIs, right? Like it's like,
Yeah.
look, the KPI decreased. We're worse off.
Yes.
It's not what the business wants to see. Am I wrong? Like
Well,
they don't want to see that. So
they don't.
Where can we have the people succeed, but then the KPIs are going up?
Yeah.
Or the people are allowed to fail for learning.
But even if
I'm
we
not
have
sure.
ideas, like if we have shareholders that we have to report quarterly profits to, we don't have a lot of opportunity to try new ideas, to take risks, to look at it, try to design for this over there and realize, well, that's not actually what that does best, but we could use it here. There's no opportunity for that. And that's why, again, it's just part of our belief system that failure is not a good thing. Losers fail, winners do not. But if you look at like baseball, for example, there's a lot of losing going on for even the best players that are out there. And if we can just take that idea and grab hold of it, it would be much more advantageous for organizations to allow their employees to try new things and see what works and what doesn't, rather than it's got to be this way. Because things work till they don't work anymore. That's just the way life is. Yeah.
And those baseball players are still performing at a very high level.
High
even
level.
Though they've technically failed.
Yeah.
They lost to another player who's also on a very high level. I like that. That's a good analogy, right?
Yeah. Had a lot of baseball in our life this summer. So it was a good opportunity to think about the skills that are necessary. It's not just one, you can't just be good at one thing to be a good ball player. There's so many individual skills, but you have to have a lot of opportunity to practice those skills and fail and practice again and see what works and try again. And we're not comfortable with that in an L&D environment. We don't want you to try it again. We want you to just get it right. Just change. I love that. It's that idea of, okay, we're all going to change. You go first, right? Like, yeah. I'll see how it works for you before I'll try it.
I want to watch you jump in, and then I'll see how I want to put my feet down.
Go. Yeah.
So what does the word sententia mean to you? Or where did that word come from? Seeing as that's the name of your business.
I think I took Latin in high school because I was told that it would help improve my SAT scores. So I took, I think, 4 years of Latin, 9, 10, 11, 12. And actually, sententia is the Latin word for quest. So when we were thinking of what the company name would be, messed around with it quite a bit. And so then I really liked that idea of, the Latin word for quest was really great for me. So that's where we settled on sententia. It's very difficult for a lot of people, though. They insist it's like sententia. And I'm like, TIA is mostly right. But so to spell out like an email or let people know the company name, it's not as easy as what I would have liked it to have been. Again, I formed the company way back, I think in 2016 it was. So we've stuck with it. I love it.
Hindsight's 2020. I love the idea of a quest. Yeah, I love the idea of a quest. So that's fantastic. I have definitely had to train myself to say it correctly and have heard others really butchered it. So I was really curious about where it came from.
Yeah, so that's all right. Figure we start a new language with it.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. What's funny is in our inner circle, which is our master craftsmen, they have a private community of practice, but we base everything on Central Time because we're in Texas. So within that group, they call it Centennial Time, which I love, right? Yeah. What time is it? It's Centennial Time. Yeah. Central Time Zone.
I love it.
So, yeah.
Well, yeah, especially when you have the Gamicon, which is 48 hours across the globe. I mean, that's intense, right? That was an intensive virtual event.
It is. And I forget how many years we've done the 48 hours now, probably 3 or 4. But this year, like this past year, we were so excited because we brought in hosts from across the globe. So they led these 4 to 6 hour chunks. Now, this year, we're actually going to Hong Kong to deliver the 48 hours. So not sure exactly how it's going to work, but we've got a master craftsman there who's been with us since the very beginning. We've got friends in Taiwan, Thailand, Hong Kong, mainland China. So we're looking to really branch, and our thought is that we'll go to different locations geographically each year going forward to host that 48V. We call it 48V. So 48-hour virtual event of GameCon. Again, that's that high power in me. Like, well, what can we do differently? We've done this.
Right.
How can we continue to expand and grow? What could we do that will add to this and even enhance that experience more? So that's why we're moving it this year, 2026. Fingers crossed.
You're moving outside of Centennial Time.
Yeah. Centennial Time. Yes. Outside of that.
Time.
Yeah.
I'll work on that one now.
We'll have to work on that one. Yes, David.
Still can't do that. What is the Hong Kong version of Centennial Time?
I don't know.
That's the next assignment.
Yeah.
That's tough. That'll be hard.
Yeah. It'll be interesting.
So, MonicaCornetti, what are games and why do we love games so much?
We were talking about this the other day, that the concept of, I think there's a single definition for games. So then I was reminded that no, there's not. But to me, why we love games are because of the rules. I open up a box, I've got all these different elements in there. But what's the first question we always ask? What are the rules? How do we play this? Right. How do I win? What's the win state here? Yes. And so in gameplay, there's how do you win? And then there's actions you're allowed to take to get there. And there's restrictions. And those restrictions are what makes the game fun. It puts that boundary around the gameplay, which then allows creativity also of how might I play within the rules and still beat my opponents? How do I get to that win state? And it's the acceptance of the rules that make play fun. And when it's not fun, if I think about when my niece was like 7, she was the champion of Connect 4. Like there was no beating her at all. But like when she was 6, like anytime we played Connect 4, midway, the rules would change. And I'd be like, well, that's not how you play. But well, yeah, I'm changing the rules, right? So that's when it's not fun. When we feel like that it wasn't fair because you changed the rules midway, that sense of fairness in me says that's not right. But when we recognize the rules and we play by those rules, that's what makes the gameplay fun. So my definition of a game, it has a start and an end. Some games don't end. Some games keep going on. But most games have a beginning and an end. They've got elements that you play the game, but what makes it fun is the boundaries, the rules that you're allowed to take to actually win that game. Some people like to have their opponent lose. That's a different motivation than winning. So, yeah.
That's the killer. We're going to talk about that on another episode. Thinking about that, these rules and how you play the game, how does that transfer in, or how does your process work to gamify learning experiences?
Well, that's good. Good question. We always start with who is playing, right? Who are we designing this for and why? And when we ask our why question, we're not asking it from the traditional L&D of what do we want the learner to learn? We ask the why of why would the business care? How is this going to make the business better? Am I going to decrease time to get my products to my customer? Am I going to increase my customer satisfaction rate, right? Like, so we've got to take it back to a measurable for the business. And then from there, once we know the who, we can look at the different game mechanics that our Chief Motivation Officer, Jonathan Peters, I think he has about 232 now, that we can use for the gamification of adult learning. So now we can start looking at, well, what are those mechanics that we can bring into our design that will match who we're designing for? And the great thing is with 232, there's a lot of choices. A lot. If you look at like, well, we have an LMS and our LMS is gamified. You'll hear that all the time when you go to a learning conference.
Sure
and you
do.
say, well, how do you mean gamified? And they'll say, well, we've got a leaderboard and we've got points and we've got badge. And again, those are all achievement based. But we don't have things like free lunch or life jackets or unlocks or boosters or all these others that encourage people to be working together. We stick to those three basics. So we think about the process. We're always looking at more than just achievement-based gamified elements. We want to expand to, we do an overlay of who we're designing for and what mechanics are possible that we can bring into that. And then we create a player journey that gets them to that win state. So I know it's a lot of words.
That was good. So looking at that process, do you have any tools that jump out, like a favorite tool? You just mentioned a lot of LMSs will say, oh, we have leaderboards. Is there one out there that you think, or maybe several, just whatever comes to mind?
Well, when we think about it, when we're teaching people the concept of how to gamify your adult learning, the key element in all of that is your belief that you can take it back and implement it in real life in your training programs. So if I become like super, like, let's just imagine, because I'm not, but let's just imagine that I think everything has to be virtual reality going forward. It's it's the greatest tool out there. It makes it seem like real life. Everyone should be using virtual reality. Well, now I've just had a huge disconnect because you're like, I don't have that. I don't think we have the budget. I don't know how to shoot three. So I don't know. So we've disconnected right away. But if I say to you, you could go back and you could use sticky notes and you could create a gamified learning. You could use, rather than badges, you just have an assortment of buttons from your grandmother's sewing supplies.
I like your buttons.
You could use buttons to create some kind of arrangement, a constellation of badging to award.
I like your buttons.
It can be as simple as anything that's around you. You could bring that into a gamified learning environment. You can do things that are low tech, like that looks like a game board or it looks like cards. It's a card game. You can take it into an e-learning program. So there's so many different ways, and there's lots of great platforms out there. The main design element is more of what do you want to do rather than how do you want to deploy it. So we always encourage people to do technology second or deployment second, but first focus on what do you want the experience to be for your learners, and then how do we create that, rather than here's the tool we're going to use, now design within that. Because I think that makes our programs all look the same and they're about this big. But if we think, here's what I want to do, now how do we do that? Then we can we're only limited by our creativity at that point.
I love that. And my next question was around the misconceptions that we have around gamification. You're sort of already talking about it, but where does that lead you? This idea that there's a lot of misconceptions about what gamification is, just that word, I think. There's a lot of misunderstanding there. What do you think are the bigger ones, or the ones that are the most detrimental?
I think that gamification has just gotten a bad reputation because people just keep regurgitating the same information. And you ask any AI tool, it'll regurgitate back to you the same bad information that has just been repeated over and over and over again, that it's just this achievement-based points, badges, and leaderboards. To be clear, we're not against point badges and leaderboards, but it motivates so few people over a long period of time that why would we just go there? In fact, one of the fun tools that we have, and you can get it for free at our gamification hub at our website, is one of the tools is called 99 Mechanics and a Badge Ain't One. So 99 Mechanics and a Badge Ain't One is just a fun way of looking at, here are 99 different mechanics that you could use to make your learning more engaging. And you don't have to use badges. There's a lot of choices out there. With that, though, I want to say one thing is that less is more. Just because we can doesn't mean we should. Just because there are 230 some mechanics out there doesn't mean we need to be putting 80, 50, 20 into our program. We want to design so that we can, I like to think of the bear, if you're familiar with that show on Hulu.
Sydney, sorry about the gun, babe. I had to get real.
And they really focus on subtracting. Like, you can't be profitable and have these dishes that have 22 ingredients in it. So same thing with gamification. How can I keep subtracting and still make this the best dish you ever ate or the best learning program you've ever been involved in? How can I keep taking away without making it less than? Taking away is making it better. And so we often see that when we design and we play test, that we've got too many mechanics in there and it's making it clunky rather than engaging and immersive. And so we've got to take some out to make it easier for the learner to progress. It sounds difficult. So I like to say it's like simple but not easy, right? Like you have to follow the process. It really is simple when you think about it, but there still are a lot of places to run amok. And so you've got to keep trying things out with whoever you're designing this for. And they'll let you know right away what's working and what's not working.
Less is more. I love it. So what is your favorite animal and why?
Do toddlers count as animals?
They're in the animal kingdom.
I would say toddlers.
No one's ever said that. I love it.
I love toddlers. We were just at the beach yesterday. And I love just seeing their little minds. Like, you want to solve the world's problems for you. Like this one little boy yesterday, he had this little shovel and he kept running down to the ocean and getting like a little shovel full of water and then running back. And by the time he got back, he had like 3 drops left on his shovel to make his sandcastle. And he did this over and over. And you're like, I want to say, honey, take the bucket with you. But he has to discover that, right? He has to say, wait, This is futile. I have got to try some other way to get water back here for my sandcastle. But he was having a blast the whole time. He's squealing and laughing and running back and forth. But that's how we learn, is that, okay, this isn't the best tool. What else do I have? The thing with toddlers is they're loud, they're messy, they tell you how it is, they're honest, brutally honest, and they're just delightful the whole way around. So I don't think it's fair that they're my favorite animal, but I think I'm not really an animal person. So I would have to say toddlers. Yeah.
No, you had a good argument as well, right?
Yeah.
You made it play, if you will.
Yeah.
So if you could only play one game for the rest of your life, what would that one game be?
Currently, I think it's Taboo.
Okay. Why is it Taboo? What are the game mechanics of Taboo that you really like?
Game mechanics of Taboo is like you draw a card and there's a word at the top, like ballet, for example. And then it gives you 5 words that you can't say. So you've got to give clue words to your team members, not say. And so someone from the other team is there ready to buzz you if you say one of the incorrect, and then you have a timer. But the thing I like about it is, because my grandsons are my play testers and the people I get to play the most with, and family members, is that it's very social, lots of laughter, lots of opportunity to increase our vocabulary. And there's words that are really difficult to try and come up with. How can I get you? Because there's certain things you're not allowed to do either. Sounds like, right? You can't do any of those type of things. But I like it for its social component and the idea of vocabulary growth. Just really getting the creative mind going on how can I get you? Yeah, how can I get you to guess these words? Yeah.
I'm not surprised there's an element of education in it. That's fun, right? It's
well, and that's the thing. We forget that basically everything we know we've learned from play.
Sure.
Very young as toddlers, play is the work of children. I think it was Piaget who said that, or Maria Montessori. But when we think about how children learn everything, social boundaries, interactions, math, vocabulary. It all happened through play. And just when things started to get really, really fun, we took all the play away from it, made you sit at a desk for hours and read words on a page with no pictures, no fun. And yeah.
We basically play the same game at our house. It's called Hues and Cues, and it's a huge spectrum of colors. It's a whole grid, and you pick up a card and you get 4 colors, and you have to tell them a word that isn't a color, and then they have to guess where they put their little peg on that huge grid. So it's the same game. It's just not words. It's colors.
If I got blue, I would say sky.
Right. And there's like a
And
sky
you would have
blue.
to guess
But then there's
blue?
like literally there's I don't know how many, maybe 100 or 120 different colors on this grid.
Hues.
So it's like literally it fades from pink into red and the whole spectrum.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
No,
fun.
it's the same game as Taboo. We've
Yeah.
actually bought several copies of it now because it's
Yeah.
anyone can
Really?
play it, and it's very good for vocabulary. So that's why I thought of it. It's kind of the same game
Right.
from a color
Really
view.
fun. And then, of course, if you don't really see colors, you can't really play that game, which
No, it's not inclusive for dichromats. No dichromats allowed.
it's very rare for females to be colorblind, but my mother is colorblind. And I just spent 2 weeks with her and, you say the blue bag, and it's meaningless and we identify so many things over there next to the red. And then you realize she has no idea what I'm talking about. So how
Right.
can I change my language so she can, and it's habitual how we communicate. And we realize
Right.
that it's not inclusive sometimes. And I'm not saying you shouldn't play that game. I just am
Well,
saying
luckily
that,
none of us are colorblind, but yeah, that's a
Yes.
good call out. And it's
Yeah.
something you should definitely be aware of.
yeah.
100%.
And it's funny because one of our internal team members, I knew him probably for 4 or 5 years before I knew he was colorblind. And I had him looking at a design and he said to me, all I see is gray. I don't know what you're asking me to look at. And I'm like, what do you mean all you see is gray? Look, there's red. I mean, and he's like, I'm colorblind. And it was like, my gosh, all this time I
Yeah.
had no idea because he's adapted to his environment so that he can still function really well at a high level. But when you're asking him to analyze or give feedback on a layout and you realize he can't see any of that, I've got to do this differently if I'm taking any kind of those limitations into account for my learners to be more inclusive. But anyhow, always a learning opportunity, always that willingness to say, wow, I did not realize that, and I've got to do different in order
Yeah.
to be inclusive for whoever. It goes back to the who. Who am I designing this for? And now we have to think about how we're going to do that.
Yeah, and there's tools out there, right? There's web pages for free that will look at your image and
Yes.
identify if it works, if it's
Yeah.
passes the accessibility test, as it were.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So use them.
Right. Very good.
So is there anything that I didn't ask you that you wish I would have asked you?
I think the only thing would be that as we think about that term gamification or game-based learning, I think a lot of people, especially here in the States, training budgets have just been sliced and diced. We've got whole organizations that no longer exist. They don't have funding, but I think that people have a hard time connecting our L&D professionals with this would help their learners to be successful. So I think when we talk about learning and development, I would like us all to realize that it's our job to help our employees to be successful. That's the job we've been given. Their managers may not help, leadership may not help, their team members may not help, but it's our job to give them the tools to help them be successful. So when we think about gamification, game-based learning, it seems like an idea that, yeah, we've been there, done that, but so few people actually have. I think they still are comfortable with just PowerPoint slides, endless reading, traditional way of people sitting in seats, listening to somebody in the front of the room talking. And if there was one thing I want to talk about that we haven't, it would just be that we all have that responsibility to help the people that we're designing for them to be successful. And what's that going to take? And even if we're uncomfortable with it, that's our job. That's what we've been tasked to do. So we've got to make that happen for our learners. And if it makes us uncomfortable, well, we're going to have to stretch a little bit to get there. I hope that makes sense.
No more data dumps. It makes perfect sense
Yeah.
to me. But
Yeah.
you're preaching to the choir a little bit, maybe. So if someone wants to reach out to you, how would they be able to connect with you?
We always started our website. So it's sententiagamification.com. And we have tons of free tools there. We have a connect form. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, but it's very easy to find me and it's easy to connect and to ask questions. We always like to be considered a source, and we've got so many free tools for people to get started and then we've got opportunities to share those ideas and to share what you're creating, because our network is very supportive and always likes to try new things and give that constructive feedback on how it can be perhaps better. I don't like to say absolutely be better, but just to give that feedback. The one thing that's different about the gamification community as a whole is that we don't eat our young. Everybody's very willing to share their knowledge and to help people to develop the skills, which I don't think you find that in a lot of different types of networking or communities. So we just encourage people, the best way to do gamification is to do it. The only way to learn it is to do it, is to try it. And you'll find out that didn't work, but then you'll think, well, what might work? And then you'll try something different. It's the absolute only way to learn it.
Well, you're definitely a valuable resource for me. And the community that you put together is also a valuable resource for me. So thank you for that, first of all. And then also thank you very much for your time today and being so candid and open to share. Thank you, Monica. I enjoyed it.
Feeling really bad about my favorite animal. So I don't have another answer.
No, you shouldn't. That was a good answer. This is the animal kingdom. This is the game layer. You say whatever you want. It's all good. Well, thanks again. And I'll see you when you see me.
All right. That's good.
All right.
Thanks so much. All right.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Game Layer. This is David Kolmer reminding you to stay present and never postpone joy. You can find transcripts of the show at gamelayer.fm. GAMELAYER.fm. Theme music by Kayla Willits. Thanks for listening. Now go. Play.
I play chess.
I play Scrabble.
I play fauteuil.
I play everything.
Hide and seek with my kids.
I play the piano.
I play board games.
I play guitar. I smash it on the pitch.
I play chess.
I play Othello.
I play all the Marios.
I play Success Strategist.
I play Street Fighter.
Final Fantasy.
I play games of my own invention. Games of my own invention. Games of my own invention. Games of my own invention.
There are many ways to play. Going for a walk together, doing nothing together is also playing. Anything that can cultivate your feeling of joy, relaxation, where you feel more recharged after doing that thing, and I think you can consider as something that we play with. I'd like to move to the domain of play